We're live. Be Better, episode 4.
4 in the books. Well,
4.
soon to be in the books.
4 in the by the time I listen to this, it's in the books.
It's in the books.
Consistency is key. I found. I got to put that light on. I found that with anything with podcasting is, I used to see guys come up with a podcast, and then they'd put out 2-3 episodes. 2 months later, the third one would drop. Fourth one would drop. 3 months later, a fifth one. It was very sporadic. Can't get a following that way. So we said, hey, if we're going to do this, we have to be consistent. For us, it's usually easier for consistency to be before we train on Fridays. So that's kind of been the schedule so far.
Yeah.
But we'll adjust with you going to Zimbabwe and
Egypt
and Afghanistan and Syria and all those countries you train. So you'll be all over the place. But we'll still, I'll make it work. I got some guests in my head lined up and some Tom Talks maybe.
Yeah, well, I was thinking for
Similar
sure
to TED
maybe
Talks, but
real estate
worse.
episode while I'm gone.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about real estate, but it's really going to be you because all I do is bought 2 houses in my life. That's it. You bought like 7.
I've been doing some real estate stuff today. I had to go to that house.
You did.
And do some work, which was unfortunate. But it's okay. It's part of the game. So this episode, Jacob, we decided earlier this afternoon we're going to be doing it on education in general.
Yeah. So usually when I'm thinking about what do we want to talk about for this, it's usually things that are going on in my life, right? So I had this younger strength coach who I met, who was the strength coach for the Congo national team. I met him in Tunisia, and turns out he's from London, and we have a mutual friend who's a scout for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Huh.
Long story to say, he asked me just, hey, do you have some advice about online coaching? I would like, he's a coach and trainer, and he's like, I want to, start it, but I don't want to just jump into it. And so there's 2 things that came up in that conversation that I thought were really interesting. Number one, he's 33, 34. He's been doing this for a long time. He's a strength coach for a national team, right? That's hard to do. There's not a lot of national teams that are playing at this point in terms of World Cup qualifying. And he asked me if I thought that he was good enough to even do that online training. And I'm like, who? If you're not, who is?
Right.
And then the second thing he asked me was, well, what do you do for continuing education? And so that's kind of where my thought, because we had about a 30-minute conversation about this, and it was just really interesting to hear somebody who's fairly accomplished and knowledgeable, kind of having that hesitancy to get into something that he clearly has expertise in, at least from the education side. Like, he knows what to do. He doesn't know the ins and outs of the business, but he understands how to train. And then this other side of, what do you do to keep learning? And so from my perspective, and I just actually had another conversation with a teenager, somebody that I knew their parents. They said, hey, could you talk to my son? He wants to be a trainer. He's in high school right now. What should he do? And, this conversation happens a lot in strength and conditioning. Should you go to school? Should you get a 4-year degree? Does that really help you with anything?
Yep.
And I'm just curious to hear, you worked for so long in your trade. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this as well. But I would just say this. I would say that, all the schooling I did in terms of helping me with training, I don't know, maybe 10% of it, maybe, just to get some foundational anatomy, physiology, understanding some things about what's going on in the research. But the research is all really far behind, actually, in exercise physiology specifically. I would say that what helped me the most, actually, was I would go to the TCU gym, and I'd look at anybody and say, I'll train you for free. I don't care who you are. College kid, teacher. I trained police officers, athletes who felt underserved, like football team. They had 3 coaches, but there's 90 guys, right? So a couple of guys were like, I don't really feel like they're taking care of me. I'll train you for free. I did that. I was in school 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of grad school before I dropped out to come here. And I trained people all of that time for free, 6 years. When I came here to interview for the job at the gym I used to run, I trained Luol Deng, 7 Notre Dame football guys, college basketball, college lacrosse, the elite high school kids that we had, back to back to back to back to back. And that was the 3rd flight of my entire life to a place I've never been, to a gym I've never been, with people I didn't know. And everybody said I was the best trainer there. Now, I'm not saying that to brag on myself. I'm saying that the only reason I could fly, land, and do that is because I had spent 6 years training everybody in the sun who wanted to be trained.
Right.
If I would not have made the time for that experience, I wouldn't be worth a crap now as a trainer. And one reason why you and I ended up even becoming friends was, I met you at church. You invited me to come over and squat, which was awesome. But I think we really got closer when you came back. Half of you came back from Miami and half of you stayed down there, right?
Left my pack in my knee.
But all that rehab that we were able to do together was because I had worked on all these athletes who had been hurt.
Right.
Again, I didn't learn any of that in school. That was all from experience. So I think there's a minimum amount of education maybe. And then after that, you can't short circuit that time of doing the job and doing it with other people, doing it with people who've done it longer than you and learning from those people and just going. So I say all that to say two things. If you really want to get into something that you don't know about, start doing it.
Yeah.
Try to find somebody that can mentor you. It doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean they're 100% perfect, but find someone who's been doing it for a while. Try to learn from them. And just start doing it. And then the second thing is build that mentality of somebody's got to do it. This might as well be you. Somebody's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this glass ceiling that we put in our lives of you see somebody online doing something and you think, oh man, they must be really good at that. And you get into whatever it is and you're like, whoa, wait a second. You start meeting the good people, so to speak. And you're like, not as good as I thought they would be. Not as put together as I thought they'd be. Not as, maybe professional or whatever the word may be. And you realize that, man, they don't have it all together either. And it just goes to show you that good intentions, good heart, good work ethic gets you a long way. Yeah.
And that, to your last point, being where you not want to be, or you see them and they're not who you think they might be. A lot of that, too, just it always comes from everybody's painting this really pretty picture online. And then you meet them in person. It's disappointment. Right, so a lot of people put a fake persona on. That's why I try to be I don't want to say overly real sometimes on Instagram, but very honest. Sometimes maybe a little bit too honest, where it's hard for people to take me a certain way. But I'm just trying to this is me today. This is me tomorrow. If you see me, this is me in 2 years. If you see me, this is me all the time. Consistency, right? And to your point on education, and I was always against it. Right, not against it. I didn't want to learn anything. To me, education was college, and I was that ain't my gig. I knew that in high school. I go, I don't want to be here. What makes anybody think that I want to be there in the same, obviously different environment?
Yeah.
But we just go to parties. The parties would be free. You could do that anywhere. If I have friends in college, I'll figure that out. So I didn't really like the whole education. So me being a patient, I took the fastest track to a job, which was education in power lines, which is a trade school, and essentially the real training is all paid for. You're getting paid to be trained to do the job for the company. So that's where my education wasn't I fucking fell in love with it still in love with it, but the education part of it, it never stops in that career. Tomorrow I'll go to work and talk to a guy and I'm I never knew that. I've never done things that way. And that's the cool thing about is my day job. It's you never stop learning. It's always something new, a different way to do a job. And then with training's the same way. I was with the Lily Bridges for a long time, learned on the fly powerlifting, a lot of luck, right? Because young, 19, 18 when I started training with them.
Also too,
on the uppity up.
I mean, you also have really good genetics. What was your?
I wouldn't say good genetics.
Oh, what was
I could squat.
Well,
but other than that,
in powerlifting, you're a third of the way there.
Yeah, true. Decent genetics. We would call them Kallas legs. My cousin's a barber or a hairstylist guy, owns his own company and stuff, and he's got big old legs. And he's I don't do anything with them, but I got them. So that's kind of, we just call it the Kallas curse almost. So that helped absolutely. And then I was with the right people, the right training environment for years and years and years. But I got a narrow mindset because I had this much education on the training, which filled my need for it at the time. And then once things stopped working, it was just, try the same program, but this way. And you're well, didn't I just get injured doing, okay. You've been doing this. So it was kind of a lot of that. And it was trial and error and then seeing the same problem keep happening over and over with the same solution. I'm huh. And then we kind of went our separate ways. trained with Silent Mike, and then that worked out for a little bit till I got injured, and then like basically right around the time we met each other, and then I'm like, man, this Jacob guy kind of knows a lot about injury. I'll just take his advice on injury. And then I did like some stuff with injury for you. I go, okay, yeah, then I know how to powerlift. And then we started to come together, and that's what formed Smart Strength at the time, Be Better Coaching Now, is our togetherness of Jacob's rehab, prehab, understanding how things move, me versus, and then me, like, this is how I do things. This is how, I don't like how you, like, we're doing a meet prep together right now. You're helping me, Cam, all putting our heads together, and then it's all about reevaluation. Like, I don't think this is the most optimal way to do this. We're going to change this. Okay, well, why do you want to change that? This is why. And this way I can pick 10 things from you that I'm going to take with me. You know, Jacob's way is not going to be the right way for Tom every meet prep. I know a lot of what I need just from being in the sport a while.
100%.
But the refreshingness of like somebody who's not 100% hardcore powerlifter to come in and say, why don't you try this? Well, that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Or why don't you front load all your accessories so you're super, super warm and you're really not that fatigued when you go hit your main movement? Yeah, but powerlifting is you walk in, you squat heavy, and you do some extension curls. That you don't get it, Jacob. Fine, I'll try it. And then I'm like, you know what? Actually, my knees feel good, my chest feels good, and I feel warm when I do my main movements. So like that part of education, not to bore everybody with powerlifting stuff too much, it's like it's always a constant process of learning. Every time you think you know something, know it all, you meet someone, you're like, I think that guy forgot more than I know.
Yeah, but it still comes back to the idea of, I think the vast amount of your education is, I think I said it earlier, but I'll say it again because it makes sense in my head saying it again, is the people you're around.
Yep.
And doing the work.
Yeah.
Because you can do the work in a really illogical way, and it's not going to get you where you need to go, right?
It might work temporarily.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially in training, and I think a lot of things in life, if you have consistency, you have grit, and you have intensity, you're going to make progress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always tell the best analogy, I love it when I talk to people about training and they're saying, you know, oh, you can't do that or you can do this. And I'm just like, whoa. Like, there's some absolutes in life. Training doesn't have a lot of them. And they're like, well, this way works. And I'm like, well, if I put a 40-pound weight vest on you and tell you to run a mile every day, that'll work. You'll lose weight. You'll get in better shape.
Yep.
Is that the best thing for you? Like, probably not, unless you're going to do some competition where you need a backpack on and you're going to run for miles.
Right.
Like, it just, you know, like things, just because things are hard doesn't mean that they're necessarily optimal.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't think about things differently unless you're put yourself in a situation where you're forced to. And that might be an injury in terms of training specifically. In life, it might be a dead end. It might be a bad decision. It might be something that happens to you that was even outside of your control. And it puts you in a stressful situation where you're forced to change. Or you're around people who help you think differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, we're talking a lot about, you know, my helping you. It's the same thing the other way. I learned
Right.
so much from you and still
Yep.
do.
Right.
Because I've never been around someone at the level of lifting that you are, and the people that you're around, Dan and Cam and Huck and all these people who are really, you know, it's funny, like if you know us well, there's this thought of like, you know, we like to have fun, and you almost become attenuated to the fact that we because you see us a lot, that it's like normal. And it's like, wait a second, if you just pull out the numbers, like take our personalities out of it, like world records, top 5, top 3,
Yep.
over and over and over and over, like everybody in our circle, right?
All in the same room, yeah.
Yeah, like even me, you know, I did the USAPL, that state championship meet in California. You know, I got second in my weight class in the whole state. It's the biggest, most populated state. That's not bad.
Right.
You know, it's not terrible. I can be better, but it's not terrible. But the point being is like, I think we've all done a good job of continuing to find the right people to help us. And that's a skill for sure, because some people get with the wrong people, it doesn't help them either.
Yeah.
But you've got to find the experience and you've got to find the right environment. And if you can get those two things together, just fall in love with the process, like you're going to get better at whatever it is that you're trying to learn about.
Yeah, whether it's training or your job or something new. Like a lot of things that I've been getting into lately is like, as silly as it sounds, like books. Like just being in school, it was never my gig, obviously. It's just never my thing. So I kind of always shied away from books. I'm like, oh, what do I need this book for? I learn on the fly. That's how I learn on my job. And now I'm trying to I follow all these people on these online personalities. I wouldn't even say personalities. Online people that I maybe look up to, and I'm like, oh, I like the way he sounds. I really like the way he speaks. wow, what he said over and over and over makes a lot of sense. Oh, he's got a book. I'll buy the book. And it's almost, a cheat code for life. So this guy spent, let's say, 10 years finding all this knowledge, all the hardship, all the struggle to finally get to where he is now, to be respected in his community or the world, whichever. And then he writes a book that I could read. It takes me about a month to read a book. I always do 10 pages a day. I just try to keep it consistent because that makes it very doable for me, which is kind of like we did last time, scheduling success. That's how I schedule things, because I know that I can handle it. Then it's not, February 28th, and I'm like, I didn't read a page. But then it's a cheat code. He tells you all the things he did, maybe not in the greatest detail, but essentially all the life lessons you can learn from somebody, and you didn't have to make their mistakes, because a smart person learns from their own mistakes. Yeah. A wise person learns from somebody else's mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that quote has always kind of stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, I'm really good at learning from my own mistakes because I'm super good at making them. I can make all the mistakes, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I'll figure out not to do that again. I do that at work all the time. Somewhat with my training, but we have so many eyes on each other now. It's kind of hard to mess up training. But I make a lot of mistakes, and I can learn from them, and I'm like, this is great, super great learning for me. But I go, there's a more optimal way to doing this. Oh, I can get these education from these people that have made me these mistakes. And even if sometimes reading for me is torture, break it down, make it simple, so I can educate myself on whatever the topic is that I think that I'm struggling with, or that I gravitate towards that month to read a book about.
Well, and the thing you said that really sticks out to me is find somebody who spent, 10, 15, 20 years only thinking about that thing.
Yep.
Because if they're successful and they've been spending, because somebody spends a lot of time in something doesn't mean that they're successful at it or know what they're talking about. And vice versa. I used to hire people at EFT, the gym, and they would come in with this like baller resume. They had this GPA and this and that, and all these degrees and certifications, and they had no training experience. Like I've had clients, I had a couple of coaches like that kind of interned with us, and I had clients say like, they're terrible. And I'm like, well, on paper, they're great.
Yeah.
And in person, they're terrible. But the point being is, you can learn so much from somebody who spent so much time thinking about that. And like the 10,000 hours was a thing for a long time, right? Like that's like the minimum to like master something. I did the math on me for training because I used to work, 12, 13, 14-hour days regularly for years. And I'm like, dude, I hit 10,000 hours pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning. And so if it's why I try to be a resource and get on calls like I did this week. I don't have a ton of time. But, this guy hits me up. I want to be a resource to him because what am I doing with all this knowledge if I'm not sharing it?
Yeah.
And I would not have been anywhere. My professor in college used to help design Nautilus equipment. He was the #1 trainer in America in 1989, USA Today. He trained Mike Singletary, Jane Fonda. Like, the guy taught me all sorts of stuff. I came to Chicago. The guy who owned that gym, his system of using conjugate for athletes, and he mixed in a lot of, if you're a super into this field, he mixed in a lot of DeFranco and Parisi and some of these kind of, late 90s, early 2000s big names into this kind of really cool blend. I've never seen that anywhere else. Even to this day, I've never seen that blend again. I learned a lot from him. Like, if I wouldn't have had those people around me, I wouldn't be halfway to where I am today. Right. So it's important on my side to make sure that I make time for that, even if I don't have it. Like, you just got to do it. And then I learned some things in that conversation too. It's not one-sided. It's always cool to hear a different perspective, and clearly we're having a conversation from the conversation that I had. Yeah. Right? It got me thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, it might be partly your age, is where you get to a point where you're like, I have X amount of knowledge, so I want to add this value to others. Like the same thing, like I went back with my high school a while ago. It was pre-COVID and stuff. After that, it just kind of everything changed. But
sure,
I just like to help those kids squat. It was like huge, And I've done that for like Charlie Zamora one time. He had me go to his gym and help some people squat, and it was like the nicest thing ever. Because like, one, they want to learn, right? Because they showed up. And two, you're like, I can look at you and squat for 5 seconds, and I'll tell you 40 things you're doing wrong. And I'm like, to me, I go, well, this is easy because I can fix this. I can fix this, try this, do this. Like, try to break it down for them. But it just feels good to add value. And part of life is, what they say is like taking responsibility yourself, then you can, if you're good at that, you take responsibility of your family, right? Or you have a family that you'll be able to be responsible for, take care of. And then once you get outside that, you can start helping your community and whatever that you want to define as your community, whether it's online clients, people that hit you up on a DM and say, hey, do you mind looking at my form real quick? I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, absolutely, dude. It's like anytime. Like people hit me up still to this day in my DMs. Hey, the squat. I know I'm not your client, but I just want to know what you think about the squat. You're off your heels. You're on your toes. Why are you looking down? Why you're straining your neck up? Your neck should be back. Everything should be straight. But my buddy says look up. Well, I'm sorry, but your buddy's wrong. Don't look up. Just like little things like that. It just feels nice because then they're like appreciative of it too.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, thanks, dude. Appreciate it. Like, yeah, I may never make $1 from you, and that's not what it's all about. I know we're always there, obviously, for coaching, but it's like, no, you just want to help people. You need to add value back into the community that either you might have paid to learn, but just because you paid to learn doesn't mean everybody else has to. If it's just a knowledge check or a review or a discussion, like I'll have discussions about people squat all day long. Here's what I think. I might be wrong, but
probably right. Yeah. You've put in your 10,000 hours of squatting, I think, at this point.
I've been squatting since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
I've been squatting for almost 18 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. In squatting,
I still mess it up.
4 times body weight.
At any body weight, I've always done 4X.
I'm just saying,
at 165, at 181, at 188, I've never not done 4X.
Again, not to turn this into like a lifting podcast, but if you understand lifting, you understand how difficult that is.
Yeah, but I educated myself around others. And that's
right.
what this is about.
Right.
It's education and getting out of that comfort zone too. Of like, I could just stay in my circle in my commercial gym and be the best.
Yeah, I mean, even your last meet, the one at Surge, that was the first time I think you didn't touch a straight bar for squat until like 6 weeks out.
Yeah.
And you were about to walk out and smash a huge PR
804
until you tore your lat.
Yeah.
And they took the bar from you. But
I still would have got it.
You were on your way up with it. It wasn't going down. But anyway. But the point being is, like, out of your comfort, for you, think about out of your comfort zone. When I first met you, you were squatting for 2 hours with a straight bar on your back to the point where you couldn't even hardly close your hands because your bicep tendonitis was
That's
so
how
bad.
you do it.
But no, the process is right people, right environment, do the work, and that's how you get better. There's no shortcuts to it. It's finding those things and then refining that over time.
And to that, it's just before you get there, you have to start. And I think that's when most people fail, is because they never start because they're like, I might look like an idiot. I think about that stuff all the time. Like, why am I doing shirts? What if I look like an idiot? Like, what if this doesn't make any sense? What if this doesn't sell? Am I looking like an idiot? Like, I question it all the time. And most people just don't even take that step of being uncomfortable. And because, with education, if you don't know something and you're surrounded by people that do, you're like, this is kind of intimidating. I don't know anything. These guys know everything. Well, like, yeah, that's the point. Yeah. That's why you're there. And getting out of that comfort zone to educate yourself on something else, you just have to start. Because if you say, I'm going to research this stuff and then once I get comfortable you could have started by then, but most people don't.
Well, and again, you learn from doing. I mean, it's kind of what we led this thing off with. Like, you can't learn crap if you ain't doing it. Yeah. You can. Don't get me wrong. Reading books and all that, like, it's great. I even in high school, I was such a nerd about training. Yeah. I used to go to. We didn't have Barnes and Noble. We had Hastings in Texas. It's like this small bookstore thing. Okay. It was like a poor man's Barnes and Noble. I would go and buy. I would go every week or two. It was like 10 miles away from where I lived. And I would go to their strength and conditioning, exercise section, and I would just pray there'd be a new book so that I could read something. Because back then, the internet barely existed. There wasn't any T-Nation or any of that stuff that was kind of some of the early Elite FTS, some of the early stuff. So I would have to wait for a book to come out, and I would tear that book apart and just learn everything I could from it. But then I would go do it in the gym. Okay, this is great. I'll never forget. It's a book by a guy named Dale Ellington, I think. He was like Arthur Jones' protege, right? The guy's got a PhD in nutrition, super smart guy. He wrote this book called The New High Intensity Training. So he took Arthur Jones' like kind of 4-second negatives to failure stuff and took it to like a different level where you're doing like 30-second negatives. Like, you might
that sounds terrible.
It was god awful. You do like one set of pull-ups. It's 30-second negative, 30-second positive, 30-second negative, and then you're done with pull-ups. That's it. One set.
Huh.
I'm like, sounds crazy. Let me try it. Dude, so difficult, right? But I learned a couple things from that. Just as an example, I learned it works. And B, it's not good for most people, because how many people do you know can do a 30-second negative, 30-second positive, 30-second negative, and how many people want to do it?
Yeah.
That's important too, right? And so the point being is, like, the knowledge that you can acquire doesn't mean crap if you don't go and do it. And I tell coaches all the time. I told this kid I talked to, this high school kid who wants to be a trainer, I said, pick something and compete. I don't care what it is. Bodybuilding, strongman, powerlifting, CrossFit. I don't care what it is. Pick something, devote yourself to it for a year, and go compete in it. Because you're going to learn more doing that than you are reading some books or watching some YouTube videos and stuff like that. Like, it always has to supplement the work. And I think that's a big problem with education in general. And even, like I said, even when I was in school, I'm sitting there in school learning this stuff. Exercise, cellular metabolism, and we spend in grad school, we spend 3 months on cardiovascular function. I mean, it's similar to some med schools in terms of the amount of time they spend on the cardiovascular system. We just did it for exercise specific reasons, which is even more nerdier than just general heart function, because we're diving into what's, reading EKGs and arrhythmias and exercise and all this other junk. I'm like, this doesn't help me train anybody at all.
Right.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't. And I kept thinking, I can't wait till I get out of here and go train somebody, and go work with an athlete. And there's a guy, Jerry Hughes. I think he's still in the NFL, actually. I think he's a defensive end. I got to train him some in college. The guy's played 11, 12 years in the NFL, right? Like, that's a really long time for the NFL.
Yeah. And
he's a defensive end. For a defensive player, it's a really long time. And it's like, I got to train him because I would train him for free. How many people say that they get to do that without? And had I not done that, I just wouldn't have been able to walk up here in Chicago and see some pro athletes and not be intimidated or scared because I'd already done the work.
Yeah, it just goes back to experience over educate. I'm kind of over educate. Well, it's a type of education, but experience over everything. When I was one of my first jobs growing up was a dishwasher, right, at a restaurant, at a country club. Both my brothers at the time, one of my brothers worked there, whatever. And then they kind of got me in when I was 14, 15, 13. I was young. I wasn't able to drive yet. So I think I'd work shifts with my brother or get dropped off my dad or something. And within a year, maybe two, as soon as I started driving, they made me a cook. But the head cook didn't train me. So that didn't help.
No.
I kind of knew what I was doing, but you had to put it on a certain plate or a certain dish a certain way, or this goes on here but it doesn't go on here. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. No one trained me. And it sucked in the middle of it. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm fucking stuff up. But then I learned so fucking fast because I fuck things up, and then I finally figured it out.
Yeah.
And then I could never forget it. I think I could go there now and start cooking. It's like I could not forget it because I learned it firsthand messing it up. And I think that was the best way for me to, not the most optimal way to learn. Maybe a little bit of guidance would have helped. But too bad. Figure it out, Tom. Well, okay, I'm here. I'm the only one in the kitchen. Time to go.
But see, that's the thing is, if you understand work ethic and discipline, right, and you cultivate that, you can become a chameleon where you shift that discipline and work ethic that you have into anything you choose. But so okay, you were doing it as my first job was a dishwasher, by the way, real job at a catfish restaurant. Well, that's exactly what I did. I bussed tables and I washed dishes. And I worked on the farm like you did growing up. But that's not a real job in terms of you get a paycheck and all that stuff. But when I went there, I busted my ass because my dad had raised me in a way that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And this is how you do it. And then if you did it wrong, you go back and you're going to fix it. And I just took that mentality to that. And then you take it to the next thing, you take it to the next thing. And so you just kind of chameleon shift between whatever it is that your interest is or your work is. But then the concepts of working hard and being consistent, those don't go away. And then once you combine that mentality with the experience, man, that's where to me you become successful. It has nothing to do with, I didn't have a hand up in this industry. You could say oh, Jacob, you walked into a gym and trained these people. But the only reason I got that opportunity is because my reputation at TCU was this is the best trainer here.
Yeah.
And I knew a guy who used to play football. They were coached on the Bears. And he was like, this is the best trainer there. So he called this guy in Chicago. Hey, this is the best trainer. like you got to earn that, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of times in this world, because we have such access to seeing successful people, like you can go on Instagram and see a successful person. Like you said, the thought is, oh, I can't get to that level. I can't be that. I can't do that. And it's like, no, you can. I mean, look, don't be an idiot. You know, I'm not going to be Elon Musk.
Right.
I'm not going to go build a space shuttle today or start an electric car company. Stay in your lane, bro. But
Absolutely.
there's a lot of things that you look at and you're like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I just have to learn and start doing the work. I mean, even real estate, and you can get about, you know, you can dive into this in that episode, but I'm sure 4 or 5 years now kind of into thinking more about that, you've already learned so much that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Probably some things you do different, probably some things you might do again. I mean, you know, if I get into it more, you know, I'm just have a house for my family now, but if I actually start doing it, like, I'm going to ask you, hey, what did you do right? What did you do wrong?
Yeah. Here's what I screwed up.
Yeah.
That's what you're not going to do.
Yeah.
Which is, and the same thing with that was like, we flipped the house ourselves. I don't fix everything. I try to fix as much as I can, but it's like YouTube, okay, which is how to build that. Like, I'm just like the other person. I'm just trying to figure it out, but I'm going to work hard. So one, I don't have to pay someone else to do it. And two, I'll get the experience and the knowledge. So next time I go to build a wall, swap out a sink, swap out a disposal, fix a toilet, I'll know exactly what to do or have a way better idea of what to do because I had hands-on experience and I did it myself. Yeah. So that's what, you know, carries me forever because now I learned 80 new things at this house flip. I go into the next one. You know, I kind of figured out my price points on things a little bit better, and then I figured out how to do more things. So it's just gonna make me more money in the long run, and now I can add value and educate my friends when I mess things up for 10 weeks on a house flip. So if Jacob decides to do one or wants to do it, hey, don't do this, do this, or hey, I'll help you because I already messed this up once and I flooded the basement. You know, stuff like that. It's, you know, stuff you don't think about because it doesn't happen.
Right.
And then when you flood the basement the day before the floors get installed and all the floors soaked, you learn very fast on what to do.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, to your point, I'll say this. I heard Bart Quan, you know, at Barbell Brigade say this recently because, you know, a lot of people know he was a Marine. He was in the service. And he said that I think it was his commanding officer used to tell him, like, learn your job, crush it, and then learn my job too. Because then when I get promoted, who are they going to promote?
Right.
The guy who knows their job super well, and they know my job. Because they're going to look and say, okay, who do you recommend? Well, I recommend Bart. Well, why? Because he crushes his job, and he's followed me around. He knows what I'm doing on my job. You're not going to spend a bunch of time trying to get somebody up to speed. He already knows it.
Yeah.
And so it's a similar thing. Like if I was to start flipping houses, I would want to learn as much as I could from you so that I'm learning my job, and I'm learning what you've already done.
Yeah.
And then it just makes the process better. But
cheat codes, man. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's simple. I just think that we psych ourselves out of not wanting to do the work. I think inherently we just have this like lazy side in all of us where it's like, I don't want to do the work. I can't do the work. I don't deserve this. I don't like, and it's just bullshit at the end of the day. It really is. And it's like your mind is just trying to self-preserve and stay comfortable. And it's like you have to choose the other side of it. You have to choose let me put myself out there. You have to choose I don't maybe know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try anyway. And that's not an easy place to live, but it's a rewarding place to be.
Yeah, it's tough being in an uncomfortable spot and thinking you shouldn't be there. Even yesterday, last night, I'm building this wall. I never added a wall to cut a room in half before. For like obviously for the podcast too, but I've never done that. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why didn't I just hire somebody? I should just work late and hire somebody. I'm like, I took in like 5 seconds. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? You know, if you mess it up, you fix it, you know, or you figure out a way to make it look better. Like, even I get that way sometimes, and I'm like big on being uncomfortable and doing stuff out of my comfort zone. And I'll try that, and I'll see what I could do. And even sometimes I'll second guess it because I have a bad imposter syndrome anyway. So I think that has something to do with it. I think it ties into a lot of things that I have like kind of issues with, but just simple stuff too. I'm like, what am I even doing? Why did I even start this? But me, I just start running and just start tripping and falling. I'm like, well, I'm already started. I might as well get up and keep going.
Yeah, but that's the default, right? The default mind for anybody, doesn't matter how successful you are, how hard you work, the default is no, I can't. I think people look at successful people and they think that their default is yes.
Yeah.
And I would say the most successful people, their default is no. but then they choose otherwise.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is you've got to take that thought captive, right? And you've got to choose where you want to be. You got to choose who you want to be. You got to choose how you want to do it, how you want to be it. It's a choice. It's not a default. It's not something that's programmed into you. It's not something you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm now going to do this. It's a choice. It's a daily choice. And I think that's why training, like, inherently, it's why we vibe with training so much. And I think it's why it's going to continue to come into the conversation, because training teaches you a lot of that.
Right.
You can't be inconsistent and get better in training.
Right.
You can't not push your head against the wall a few times and get better. Like, you have to do those things in training to make progress. And if you've never trained seriously for something, it's hard to understand that concept, but man, it's an important one.
Yeah. No, it is. And this podcast was just supposed to be about general education. We ventured a little bit more into training than we normally would have, but it's just a lot of things are relatable with trying new things, putting yourself in environments of other people where you may maybe not want to, but you know you need to. So this will help you push yourself to do that. Sign up at the gym that you're scared of and take a class that everybody's going to think they're staring at you, but they're actually more worried about themselves than they'll ever be worried 100%. About you, which is literally 100% of any gym or class there is, unless someone's just arrogant and they're not a good person. But typically, it's just most people care about themselves more than they care about you. So hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of push of just how I see things, how Jacob sees things, and the more you learn, the better off you're going to be, the easier things are going to be in life, and you will eventually feel really comfortable being uncomfortable. And education helps with a lot of that, because you don't know everything and you never will.
Well, if you get that experience, it's not strange anymore. So even if it is uncomfortable, you're like, I've been here before.
Right.
And
sometimes you just lean into it.
Got to.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up.
Awesome.
We got to go deadlift.
Yep.
About 7 weeks out of comp, 8 weeks, 7 training weeks. So hopefully a heavy deficit maybe tonight. And yeah, that's all I got.
Well, and it's a good way to wrap it up, because we're going to go put some of this stuff we've been talking about to work into the test right now. See what we got. And it's 8:30 on a Friday. I don't think either one of us feels like deadlifting.
We're gonna hit the bar,
but we're gonna go freaking do it.
Follow us at BeBetterBrand, BeBetterOfficial.com, official BeBetterBrand on Instagram, podcast BeBetterOfficial, YouTube BeBetterOfficial, I believe, is on YouTube as well. Basically, Be Better Kallas, Be Better Jacob.w.ross. You'll find us. Hopefully, like the content, give us 5-star review rating. It helps us push the numbers a little bit more in the algorithms and people searching fitness and education. And it's kind of like an education podcast, which is the topic today. But so if you like it, please share it. It helps get the message out a little bit farther. We don't really have any sponsors or anything. We're just pushing content right now to try to get it out to as much people as we can, as much people as can relate to this as possible. So if you like it, please share it. Give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating review. It really does help us out. So that's all I got.
Yeah, you say it best. Support those, that support you.
Those who support you.
And we're trying to put stuff out to help. And so if it is helpful, support and spread it.
Yep. Appreciate it. Be better.